Rival. Google describes the word rival as a person or thing competing with another for the same objective or for superiority in the same field of activity. And in the 20 years and counting of LeBron James' NBA career, he has created a bunch of rivals, had rivals in the way of the one goal every NBA team has, a NBA championship. So as LeBron James potentially goes into the twilight of his career in year 20 and now being the leader in NBA history with 268 games played in the playoffs and counting, I think it's a good time to go back and rank all of LeBron James' biggest rivals on a tier list to discuss who LeBron James had the hardest time with in the NBA playoffs, and in some cases who he blocked off from that same goal in his career, many on top of many a times. In his career, I have narrowed down 6 teams in his time in the NBA that qualify for this, ranging from teams who struggled with in the playoffs, juggernauts in the same conference you had to face them over and over again, and of course the teams he repeatedly had to face in the NBA Finals to win a ring in the first place. And believe me, these 6 serve as major stepping stones in his career that shows major development in his career in one way or another. But before we start, as usual, if you want more videos like these, be sure to like the video and show support and subscribe to be notified when new videos come out. And as usual, this will be a long one, but you already know who it is. Roll it!
3, 2, 1.
But before we start this video, in this digital age where your protection online should be the absolute first priority as you travel the web, I think you'll be interested in today's video sponsor, NordVPN, the leader in online privacy and many more things that you can take advantage of today. For example, their ability to find new content on different services like Netflix. Right now I'm on the American servers where you can see that it's showing me things that are locked in US servers. But just to say I make a change to somewhere like Japan, you can see how sharply different all the shows become, and this applies to any country outside of the US, including the UK, France, Germany, China, almost anywhere. And for my sports fans out there, which is literally anyone watching this video, you can even use it to avoid local blackouts when you're watching sporting events. You can even use it to get cheaper airfare and travel rates, or even use social media outside of the US. The possibilities with NordVPN are endless, but most importantly, they provide the best internet security out there with their many features of blocking malware, stopping intrusive tracking, and intrusive ads. If all of this sounds like something you'd be interested in, then take advantage of NordVPN with 4 free months on a 2-year plan when you sign up using my link on the screen and in the description with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, go to nordvpn.com/alvinilinguini for 4 free months on a 2-year plan, and thank you for NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into it. Let's start this one off with a rival that has produced a lot of close calls for LeBron, but also that created a lot of viral moments, god tier play from LeBron, a lot of gatekeeping, and gave LeBron his first taste of the NBA playoffs. In LeBron James' first year in the NBA playoffs and his 3rd season in the NBA, his first test in the playoffs would come against the Washington Wizards as the 4th seed to their 5th seed. At that time, LeBron James was growing into his own, just hired Mike Brown, who at the time was a former Greg Popovich assistant, who got his first gig as a head coach and just won 50 games in his first season as a coach, and of course added role players in Larry Hughes, Daniel Marshall, and Damon Jones to help turn the Cavaliers into a perennial playoff threat. But what LeBron James didn't know is that he was going to face off against an unpredictable Wizards team led by Gilbert Arenas, is that LeBron James would have to face off against this team 3 years in a row, all in the first round, gatekeeping them from any type of success in the playoffs. But in their first official meeting, a 21-year-old LeBron James would get his first taste of the NBA playoffs, playing in all 48 minutes of regulation for a game high of 32 points. But then he'd meet them again in game 2, where he learned about another crucial part of the playoffs: game planning. Because in game 2, LeBron James would struggle against the Wizards, going 7 of 25 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3, and most shockingly, only dish out 2 assists and giving out 10 turnovers. At this point is where you can imagine LeBron James getting a true taste of how the playoffs actually are. Unlike the regular season where you can have random explosions of dominance in an 82-game span, in the playoff series that can potentially go to 7 games, each game is going to come with new adjustments to try to limit you as much as possible, unlike in the regular season. With that in mind, in game 3 was LeBron James' redemption game to make a full redemption from his game days before, and it was absolutely everything the Cavs needed, going for a then playoff high 41 points and also sealing the game with his first ever playoff game winner. And with a heartbreaking Game 4 by 10, with a combined 77-point effort of Caron Butler, Antoine Jameson, and Gilbert Arenas, LeBron was able to get them back with another game winner in Game 5. And with the Cavaliers now up 3-2, with the Wizards back against the wall, it came down to either a Game 6 or 7 for LeBron to get his first ever playoff series win. And it happened in the most Michael Jordan-esque way possible that'll start off an amazing career in the playoffs for LeBron James. Game 6 of the Eastern Conference first round series between the Cavs and Wizards was a game full of back and forths. 15 ties, 24 lead changes, and a lot of free throws. But with that in mind, the Wizards needed to defend home court from the Cavs, and a 3-point lead was created by Ronald Murray of the Cavs with 2 seconds left. Gilbert Arenas decides to extend the game into overtime with a very deep and very contested 3-pointer. But if you thought that was the highlight of the game, you're far from mistaken, because the OT period was a dogfight with only 15 points being scored between the two teams, and the Wizards were not able to give up any type of leadway in that time frame. But with a 1-point lead and 15 seconds remaining, Gilbert Arenas gets fouled by Ronald Murray with the chance to extend the lead to 3 to make it harder for the Cavs to win in the final seconds of the game. But this is where LeBron James comes to making a statement against Gilbert Arenas. After missing the first free throw off the front of the goal, LeBron James takes this opportunity to get a mental advantage over Gilbert and says, and I quote, "If you miss these, you know who's going to make it." And as he misses the second one, LeBron James gets double teamed off the inbound, passes it to an open Larry Hughes, who then gives it to Damon Jones to end the 4-5 matchup of the Cavaliers and the Wizards. This series in general went down as LeBron's first real look at the playoffs, as he had to go through multiple close game situations. 2 of them he ended himself, or even 3 if you consider the Arenas thing being his doing. But after dealing with them in his first go around in the playoffs, averaging 35-7-5, he ends up meeting them again in 2007, with them now being the 2nd seed, and now seeing the Wizards as the 7th seed in the first round. This time making easy work of them due to the injury of Gilbert Arenas in 4 games. But as they meet again the next year in the 07-08 season, things were about the same, but with different circumstances. In the 2007-8 NBA season, the Cleveland Cavaliers dropped back to where they were the season before as the 4th seed, and once again meeting the Wizards, who were the 5th seed, who have been led by Caron Butler and Antoine Jameson due to Gilbert Arenas' injury troubles. But he was ready to pop back by the end of the season and ready for the playoffs to face LeBron for the 3rd straight year in the playoffs. But by the 3rd time, LeBron already knew all their tricks and got better himself individually, even with them adding Deshaun Stevenson, who for some reason was regarded as the LeBron stopper, and even had his few moments of beef with him, which included calling LeBron overrated in an interview, which caused LeBron to compare himself to Jay-Z and Deshaun to Soulja Boy, which Soulja Boy didn't like, so he wore a Deshaun Stevenson jersey to all the DC home games, and even got a mention in Jay-Z Blow the Whistle, which again just caused a very weird beef that will probably not get talked about all that much unless you're secret base. But just a very weird NBA interaction in general. But anyways, as LeBron James would win the series in 6 games in a very interesting fashion, losing by 36 in Game 2 and losing by a game-winning layup by Caron Butler in Game 5, LeBron would never meet the Gilbert Arenas-led Washington Wizards ever again in the playoffs. In fact, he wouldn't even see Arenas in the playoffs fully, as he was out in Game 5 and Game 6 due to injury. But as the curtains close on the first real continuous threat annoyance in the NBA for LeBron, it is time to rank it. LeBron James' first repeat playoff foes deserve some respect as the team who would give LeBron his first real taste of what it means to be in the playoffs and continuously give him trouble despite of him winning all 3 games, and gave us plenty of great moments from it. Some on the court and some off the court. LeBron had a record of 12-4 against the Wizards and averaged over 30 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. And again, let's not forget about his clutch time heroics against them in his first ever series. For now, I think it's fair to give them a C-tier ranking, which may come as a surprise to some, but outside of his second time they faced the Wizards, they were always a serious threat to a young LeBron James Cavs, and both times could have knocked them out. Add in the storylines of LeBron James' clutch plays, mental gymnastics from Arenas, and much more, you have something that, if it wasn't for injuries to Gilbert, could have gone forever. But again, injuries cut down that matchup way too soon. After LeBron James' first ever taste of the NBA Finals and losing at the hands of the San Antonio Spurs, of course we know the goal was to return back to reclaim a chance at winning his first ever NBA championship. However, in the summer of 2007, the Boston Celtics would turn from a lottery team led by Paul Pierce to being a big three of sorts due to 2 trades for a 31-year-old Ray Allen from the Supersonics and a 31-year-old Kevin Garnett from the Timberwolves. Overnight, or I guess technically in the span of a month, the Celtics went from a struggling team in the lottery to a team with championship aspirations. And that time in the Eastern Conference, LeBron James didn't have as much competition before the fact that the top of the East was a aging Pistons teams, themselves in the Cavs, a young Raptors team with Chris Bosh and D Wade in the Heat, only 2 years removed from winning the finals. But just like that, it created possibly the strongest inter-conference foe LeBron has ever had to deal with in his NBA career. And a team who would of course change the trajectory of the league for years to come, and that will only be proven by the fact that Celtics will end up getting the best record in the NBA with a record of 66-16 and on top of the Eastern Conference. But as LeBron James will beat them in the second round of the 2008 NBA playoffs, you can easily see the mismatch almost from all sides that would come to immortalize this eternal struggle the Cavs would go through with the Celtics. In game 1 of the 2008 second round, LeBron James will be shown just how hard things are about to be, going 2 of 18 from the field for 12 points and turning over the ball 10 times and losing the game by 4. In game 2, it wouldn't get much better, shooting 6 of 24 for 21 points and turning over the ball 7 times, losing by 16. And they would win the next 2 games off of LeBron's playmaking, getting his teammates more involved. Games 5 through 7, however, would only end up showing the true difference between the two teams, as in the game 5, the trio of Rondo, Paul Pierce, and KG would combine for 75 points together as the C's would win by 7. Game 6 was ruled by LeBron James scoring damn near half of the points as the game ended with a score of 74-69. Nice. With LeBron James scoring 32 of those points and both teams having a pace of 80.2 to just show you what type of basketball we're dealing with here. And finally, Game 7. In the first year, these two teams had to face off against each other. For the chance to go against the Detroit Pistons, the team LeBron has already risen over in his path to the finals only 1 year ago with 1 game remaining. But as Paul Pierce makes both of his free throws at the end of the game, giving the Celtics a 5-point lead and only 7 seconds left, the chance for the Cavs to come back became basically impossible. And as LeBron James misses his last 3-point attempt of the game with 5 seconds left, the Cavs will end up losing to the Celtics 97-92. LeBron James gave it his all, scoring a game-high 45 points, but at the same time, his matchup with Paul Pierce would end up being more than he could handle in that Game 7 situation, scoring 41 points himself. But what really kills it for the Cavs that day was the 10 missed free throws from the line. But even with LeBron scoring the second most points he has ever put up in a playoff game and scoring 45% of the team's points, he would go and be the loser of that hard-fought series to the hands of the team who would go and win a championship, beating Kobe Bryant and the Lakers. 2 years later in the 2010 playoffs, however, was thought to be the Cavs' year. With a 61-21 record, they were the team who sat on top of the NBA and the Eastern Conference, owning the 2-time MVP, as the Celtics are dealing with an older core. But after beating the Bulls in a 5-game series came the rematch everyone looked forward to. But this series, like their first go-around, came with a lot of attacks to LeBron and forcing the role players to beat them instead of LeBron single-handedly. As the Cavs led the series 2-1 off the backs of LeBron, averaging 32 points on 54% shooting from the field and 38% from 3 on 4 attempts a game, LeBron once again showed that he was the best player in the series, even putting up 2 steals and 2 blocks, really trying to go above and beyond for his team to make it back to the finals. But from games 4 to 6 would be exactly what the Cavs feared. LeBron again getting game planned and limited, forcing others to step up. From games 4 to 6, LeBron would average 21 points a game while shooting 35% from the field and giving up 6 turnovers a game in those last 3 games to the Celtics. And with the Cavs losing by 10, 32, and 9 in Game 6 would once again end another amazing season by the hands of the Boston Celtics. And as you can imagine, LeBron was not satisfied by that, because people were going at LeBron hard for his blunders in this game to stay alive after losing 3 games straight.
In the last 2 minutes, Rob Parker, I saw LeBron James give up, and in turn his team gave up.
The whole team did,
They all just said, okay, if you're giving up, we'll
So off of that, we already know how the story goes. LeBron goes to Miami and makes it to 4 straight finals, blah, blah, blah. But in that route, he faces the Celtics 2 more times, continuing the saga as the trio of Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and KG gets older. In 2011, LeBron's first season in Miami, he handles the Celtics pretty easily in 5 games, with only 1 hiccup in Game 3 where they lost by 15. However, in the 2012 playoffs and one more final run in them with a 34-year-old Paul Pierce, 35-year-old Kevin Garnett, and a 36-year-old Ray Allen making their way back to the conference finals with 2 straight grit and grind series they just got past, going through 6 and 7 games respectively. This team, despite the age, is not full of pushovers as the Celtics own the best defense in the league that year. So as the 2nd-seeded Heat and the 4th-seeded Celtics met in the shortened NBA lockout season, experts saw this series going either way just from how good the Celtics were doing in the playoffs entirely. But as the Heat won the first 2 games without Chris Bosh, they were really starting to miss his inside presence, losing the next 2, and in Game 5 losing again even with him in the lineup. So now that leaves LeBron and the Heat down 3-2 with their backs against the wall and risking another disappointing season like they did 2 years before to the Mavericks. But as we all know, Game 6 would be regarded as one of his best playoff performances in his career. 45 points, 15 rebounds, 19 of 26 shooting, and beating the Celtics that day by 19 points. And in Game 7, LeBron James finished the job with a 31-point performance and drawing 17 free throws, beating the C's by 13 points. Overall, we knew this rivalry against the Celtics for many things, being one of the few squads that has ever limited a young LeBron and kept him out from becoming more successful in his career. At the same time, they were the team who gave LeBron his worst performances in his playoff career, brought out the best LeBron in many key games, adding on to the fact that due to his losses to the Celtics, he ended up going to the Heat, which caused a couple of interesting effects to the NBA in general that we do not speak of. This rivalry got to be considered one of LeBron's hardest, the best that he has ever had to deal with up until this point. And with that being said, the only place this rivalry can go is in the S tier with one of the best in his time in the playoffs. Just considering what the NBA would be without this team and without this rivalry in general, meaning the NBA meta of super teams may have never been created, and of course all the things I spoke about before, LeBron would have had multiple bouts with the Lakers, giving us the finals everyone wanted in LeBron and Kobe, and so much more. Now we move on to LeBron's main in-conference rivals in the Eastern Conference during his time with the Miami Heat, the Indiana Pacers, specifically the Paul George-led years. After the downfall of the Celtics, especially after Paul Pierce and KG got traded away to the Nets, and the Chicago Bulls have their difficulties from a year-to-year basis due to Derrick Rose injury troubles, the team who really popped up to the scene during the Heat's reign was the Indiana Pacers, who was manned by Paul George and a 7-foot Roy Hibbert, David West, and the living wild card himself, Lance Make 'em Dance Stevenson. In their first matchup in the 2012 NBA playoffs, they were primarily still being led by Danny Granger, but the Pacers were still the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference, being one of the most balanced teams in the NBA offensively and defensively. But in their first matchup against each other, LeBron James and the Heat won in pretty convincing fashion, with only 2 hiccups in Game 2 and 3 due to the lack of help from role players in the series, which included Shane Battier going 0-6 from 3 in Game 3, Dwayne Wade getting limited in Game 2, going 8 of 22, and Mario Chalmers going 2 of 10 in Game 2 in a game where they only lost by 3. But as the Heat went on and won 3 straight games, that handles the Pacers in their first year. And going into the 2012-13 season, the Pacers would be without Danny Granger, who would be injured for almost the entirety of the 2013 season. But even then, the upcoming star in Paul George was handling his scoring duties and keeping up the main defensive identity the Pacers kept up and gave them a 49-33 record. However, still levels below the 66-16 Heat. And as they would meet again in the conference finals, being the only team who could stop one of the most unstoppable trios with MVP LeBron James and the top team in the NBA, the Pacers had a plan, and it was to use their size to their advantage. The Miami Heat at the time were revolutionizing the game, going one of the small ball lineups created by Eric Spoelstra to maximize LeBron James' slashing heavy game and make it easier for him to do whatever he do due to that. Due to that, they clearly elected to start the nimble 6'11" Chris Bosh at center and start a mix of of Shane Battier and Udonis Haslem at the 4. But going against the Pacers, who started the giant 7'2", 270-pound Roy Hibbert at center and the rough and tough David West at power forward, the Pacers were ready to give the Heat hell in the paint, and that's exactly what they would end up doing. The first game was started by David West and Paul George combining for 52 and PG hitting the game-tying shot to send the game into overtime. But even as the game would go into overtime, LeBron James would have the last laugh, making the game-winning layup as time expires on their all-defensive team member that year and savior of that game, Paul George. But starting in game 2 is where Roy Hibbert would make his mark in the series, scoring 29 points, 10 rebounds, and grabbing 6 offensive boards, which helped the Pacers tie the series up 1-1. Game 3 was a game where Miami kept the lead after the start of the second quarter and had the lead as high as 20, but in true Indiana fashion, they came back to defend themselves in game 4 on their home court, holding LeBron only to 24 points and fouling him out in the process. Game 5 was another large win for Miami, and Game 6 was dominated by Indiana with another PG and Roy Hibbert masterclass. But Game 7, for the ticket to go against the San Antonio Spurs, was all Miami, keeping Indiana to a down bad 76 points, with the Heat scoring 99 as LeBron scored 32 and garnering 16 free throws to clear out the toughest Eastern Conference opponent that he had in the playoffs since the Boston Celtics last tour. And in the final rematch in 2014, the Pacers would come ready once again to defend their place as the rightful owners as kings of the East. Paul George once again improved into the realm of stardom. Luis Scola was traded to the Pacers in a move made during the summer, and Evan Turner was traded to the Pacers for Danny Green for more wing depth as Danny would continue to have his health issues. While for the Heat, they were dealing with an older D Wade who was starting to lose his step in the league, making LeBron take another step further in his career. However, the Pacers, leading the East as the 1 seed, gave them the advantage in the home court battle, as the Heat did last year as it went to 7 games. And this time around, it truly became a battle between the two stars, and Paul George and LeBron James would be the only 2 players to average 20 points or more in that series. And in game 1 was taken by the Pacers by the all-around play of the Pacers starting lineup, while LeBron was being led by Dwayne Wade, who scored 27. But LeBron and the Heat made things known that the East still belonged to them, as they went on and won 3 straight games by an average of 9 points, and after losing game 5 by 3 off of a missed Chris Bosh 3 and David West sealing the game with 2 free throws, the Heat lost by 3. However, just like last year, in the situation where the Heat had to close things out to make the finals, they once again got things done on their home court, winning 117-92. The most points they scored in the series off the back of LeBron James and Chris Bosh combining for 50 points while shooting a combined 18-26 from the field and 13-15 from the free throw line. And with that ends the saga of the Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat. Because as we all know, in that summer after the finals, Paul George would find himself injured due to a certain mishap during a Team USA scrimmage. But overall, how did this inter-conference rivalry stand out the test of times compared to others we will be talking about and others already talked about? Well, first things first, LeBron James never personally had a problem with them. However, of course, they were challenging to deal with every single time. Unfortunately, the Pacers were never adept at getting the job done, losing in 7 once and losing 2 times in game 6s, both to 10-point leads or more. Sucks they're the best thing we had in the Eastern Conference during that time, but we'll take what we can get considering it was the Eastern Conference in the 2010s. Overall, I'll give it a B on the tier list, which is, in this case, gives them a pretty mid rating alongside the Wizards in the early LeBron years. When you think of one of the most dominant franchises since the 2000s, there should be only a few franchises that come to mind, but a dynasty that rarely receives their flowers, even to this day, is the run the San Antonio Spurs had since drafting Tim Duncan and adding Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, winning 4 championships in the span of 14 years, and at one point winning 3 rings in 5 years. And one person who was a victim of that run was a young LeBron James, who ran into them in the 2007 NBA Finals. As you notice for the first time in this video, I'm talking about a Western Conference foe, and that is because this is one of the few teams in the playoffs who was able to stop LeBron from having more glory than he already has put on his stacked resume. But I will make this first part short. In the 2007 NBA Finals, LeBron James, in his second ever playoff run in his career, had the privilege of going against one of the best franchises in the 2000s in the San Antonio Spurs, who are routinely going after championships and already won 2 in the last 4 years. On this team already, they had a trio of Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker, but as you go down the roster, the name of threats only grow, with a perimeter lockdown defender in Bruce Bowen and a former All-Star in Michael Finley. This team accounted for the best defense in the NBA and the 5th best offense in the league. So this team will be a very formidable foe to a LeBron James-led team who struggled to put up points on the board outside of himself, of course, but were mainly based on defense at the time. However, the best comparison I can give you of this team was basically another Allen Iverson team in the 2000 finals, just without Dikembe Mutombo as their center, because, you know, Ilgauskas isn't exactly the best defender. Which is funny because he also had his old teammates in Eric Snow and Larry Hughes. Anyways, going into this series, not a lot of people had the Cavs winning it, but to the Cavs' credit, in all 4 of the games they played in that sweep, they were never truly out of it. Game 1 ended with a score of 76-85, so obviously defense was being played, but LeBron that game had a near playoff low of 14 points, shooting 4-16 from the field and turning over the ball 6 times. This is exactly how all these games would go. Game 2, they only lost by 11, but LeBron and company could just not get anything going offensively, being down 16-6 to start the game and being down as much as 26. Game 3, they lost by 3 and even kept the trio contained the entire game, but the Cavs hadn't had the lead since the 7:50 mark of the first quarter and played from behind the entire game, where the last time they tied up with the Spurs was when the score was 48-48 with 4 minutes left in the third. Yes, the game was that bad. But finally, while down 3-0, the Spurs celebrated the sweep 4-0, winning by 1 measly point due to the Cavs being down by 5 with 24 seconds left, and Manu Ginobili making all of his free throws down the stretch, while the Cavs were desperately trying to stay alive with 3 free throws being dropped by Damon Jones, LeBron hitting a 3, and Damon Jones hitting another 3 at the end of the buzzer that avoided the game ending in a 4-point game. This series was a lot closer than the series score says, but it also showed that LeBron had a lot more work to do in his career before he can truly compete, as we've seen him do in his run against the Celtics and the Magic in the playoffs. But now we skip 6 years later, LeBron James creates his own dynasty team with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, but the Spurs are still running strong with their big 3 and role players galore. Kawhi Leonard in his 2nd season being the 3rd leading scorer, Danny Green, who was moved up in the G League, or at the time the D League, Boris Diaw, a staple on the 7 seconds or less Suns teams as a very versatile player. The list goes on. So as the Spurs and Heat, the 3rd best team in the NBA and the top team in the NBA meet, it is time for LeBron to get his revenge on the team who ended his first ever attempt at winning a NBA championship. Game 1 was a game that LeBron didn't impress in scoring, only scoring 18 points while being limited to only 16 shot attempts and losing by 4. But he did get a triple-double in that finals game. While Game 2 was another low-scoring effort by LeBron with 17, but was certainly saved by his teammate and Mario Chalmers, Chris Bosh, D Wade, and Ray Allen, who each scored 10 points or more in their route to shutting down the San Antonio Spurs offense. And finally, Game 3, where LeBron James once again didn't show up to play, scoring a series low 15 points and shot 7 of 21 while watching his team get routed by 36 points. But in true LeBron James fashion, watching his team struggle after that terrible loss, decided to tap into that greatness everybody expects of him and carrying the Heat to a potential championship. People called the one that he had against the Thunder an easy ring, but now he was going against an already battle-tested Spurs team who knew already how to contain LeBron. But in Game 4 and beyond, everything changes. Game 4 starts off with him redeeming himself with a near 33-point triple-double where he went 15-25 and helped beat the Spurs by 16. But again, he was brought right back down to earth with an 8-22 game, and again seeing his team lose by double digits. And with their backs against the wall, down 3-2, he had 2 more chances to bring a championship to Miami in front of the Miami crowd, which brings us to Game 6. The game people considered as LeBron's legacy game, as his legacy was saved by someone else. But that's just the LeBron haters, honestly. With a minute left in the 4th quarter and after a Tony Parker made 3, the game found itself tied 89-89. Up until that point, LeBron James found himself with 27 points and scoring an already 13 points in the 4th quarter after starting the quarter down 7. But as the Heat found themselves back in the game and the Spurs just kept making the right plays to keep them from getting the lead. However, though, with 3 straight turnovers from Mario Chalmers and LeBron James, the Spurs had turned that into a 5-point lead with 28 seconds left. But with Eric Spoelstra calling a timeout after it, we would see one of the best moments of NBA history, NBA Finals history, happen. Out of the timeout, LeBron James shoot a 3 that would end up missing, but with an offensive rebound from Mike Miller and passing it back out to LeBron, LeBron would make the second attempt to bring the lead down to 2. And with a foul to Kawhi Leonard by Mike Miller, Kawhi could have potentially ended the series there with 2 made free throws, bringing the lead up to 4. But as he missed the first, the chances of the Heat winning became a whole lot more realistic. After nailing the second one, giving the Spurs a 3-point lead, we would see the play happened.
Just attack the basket. James catches, puts up a three. Won't go. Rebound, Bosh. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
With that ties the game and brings things into overtime where the Heat would end up winning. However, not in front of a home crowd because Heat fans are just that fickle. You know what I'm talking about. But anyways, as the final game of the series arrived, we already knew what LeBron James is known for in series clinching situations. He is never one to let a series go longer than it should. And in fact, in 8 game 7s that he has played in his career, in total he's averaged 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists a game, and is only lost in 2 game 7s in his entire career. Against the Pistons in his early Cavs days, and against the Celtics before he went to Miami. So as you can imagine, LeBron was ready to put his all into this last game, and he did that, scoring a series high 37 points on 12 of 23 shooting, with 22 of those points being scored in the second half, which gave LeBron his second championship he has ever won, and then being able to triumph over the team who kept him from winning a championship in his second ever playoff campaign. But as we all know, unfortunately, the story does not end there, as they would end up having a rematch next year, with the Spurs being much stronger and much more motivated for war. While the Heat were on a slight decline teams-wise, LeBron, while capable, can certainly will his team to victories as we've seen, but with this 2013-14 Spurs team, they were not like how they were the year before. And unfortunately, losing in 5 games by an average of 18 points while only winning 1 game due to the clutch plays of himself, D-Wade, and Chris Bosh. But with the Spurs in the finals having an offensive rating of 120, which is more than the leader of offensive rating in the NBA this season in the Sacramento Kings, that's a hard pillar to overcome. But after the series ended, their LeBron James career against the Spurs in the playoffs became 1-2, and as it stands, outside of another team who end up doing worse, the San Antonio Spurs are the only team that kept him from winning multiple championships, and one of the 2 teams that he went against more than once in the playoffs who have had a negative record against. This back and forth with the Spurs may have been forgotten due to how badly he was beaten in 07 and in the 14 finals, but we gotta give it to the Spurs just for how well they was able to contain the legacies of one of, if not the best players of all time in NBA history. With that being said, it's an easy A tier for me on the tier list. Unfortunately, it sucks we didn't meet up more over time, which is kind of why I had to put it lower than the Celtics rivalry with Paul Pierce and friends, since it spanned over a much longer time, which is honestly a testament to, again, just how good the Spurs were being able to meet up LeBron 3 times in his career in the finals. But again, what the Spurs did to LeBron cannot be forgotten at all, being 2 out of the 5 finals losses that he has on his resume. We've talked about already 2 teams that LeBron had to face off in the East over and over again for the claim of supremacy in the Eastern Conference, and most times to represent the conference in the finals with the Pacers and the Celtics. But as LeBron goes into his new chapter of his career back to Cleveland, he was also having to fight a new team looking for supremacy in the Toronto Raptors. During that time in the Eastern Conference, the team was only, of course, led by a younger and less complete all-around compared to his modern-day counterpart in Demar Derozan and Kyle Lowry, who is regarded as one of the most underrated point guards in the NBA. The dynamic duo together created one of the most dynamic Eastern Conference duos in the NBA, with a great coach in Dwayne Casey and a plethora of role players to complete the roster. During that time also, they were continuously breaking franchise record with their team record and taking new heights as a franchise. Only problem was, there was a certain LeBron James who has made 5 straight finals up until that point and had 0 interest in giving up that streak. So how did that 3-year streak of facing the Toronto Raptors go? Well, in their first ever year the Cavs and the Raptors met up was in the 2016 NBA Eastern Conference Finals. In the 2016 NBA season, the Cavs and Raptors were neck and neck with each other, fighting for home court advantage in the playoffs. At the end of the day, the Cavs won that race by 1 game with a 57-25 record, while the Raptors had a 56-26 record. However, optimism for the Raptors was not the highest from experts, as the Raptors in both of their series went to 7 games, while the Cavs had a much easier time sweeping both of their opponents to the route of the conference finals. And as the Heat blew them out by 50 points combined in the first 2 games, with LeBron James only needing to score 24 and 23 points respectively in those games, while other players on the team handled the rest, it just showed off the clear differences in these two teams, especially as they were on a revenge tour after the loss to Golden State the year before, and now fully healthy and much more adjusted as a team, unlike in LeBron's first year the season before. But for the next two games, the Raptors shocked the world, beating the juggernaut Cavaliers twice in a row. In Game 3, Kyrie Irving had one of his worst games of the series, going for 13 points and 3 of 19 shooting, while Kevin Love shot 1 of 9. And on the other side, Demar and Kyle Lowry combined for 52 points to score over half of the Raptors' total points and keeping a top 5 offense in the Cavaliers down to one of their worst games in their season and playoffs, giving the only Canadian team in the NBA hope for a comeback. And Game 4 was much more convincing in that comeback, tying the series 2-2 by once again limiting the members of their starting lineup in J.R. Smith and Kevin Love, shooting a combined 7 of 26 for 19 points, while Kyrie and LeBron had to carry that weight due to their screw-up. While on the other side of the pond, the duo of Demar and Kyle Lowry leveled up once again, scoring 67 combined points together at their home court. But as I said earlier in this video, LeBron-led teams usually don't play with their food too much when they have a lead, which brings us to Game 5, where in retaliation at home, the trio of Kyrie Irving, K-Love, and LeBron combined for 71, ending off a first quarter with a 37-19 lead, ending the second with an even more dominating 65-34 lead, and as the game never became close or even seemed close after that point, winning the game 116-78. At the same time, the strategy of trying to limit DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry was much more successful this time around, limiting DeMar to 2 of 8 shooting, however sending him to the line for 12 free throw attempts, and for Kyle, a very modest 14 points with 5 of 40 shooting in 30 minutes. For now, a 3-2 lead was in the hands of LeBron, who is never known for blowing leads. So in front of the raging Toronto crowd of over 20,000 people, LeBron would go off for 33 points, and again, going off with his big 3 as they combined for 83 points as the Raptors once again could not keep the Cavs down as a team, shooting 17 of 31 from 3 and 54% as the entirety of the team, winning the game 113-87. Closing down Toronto's miracle season that earned them their best record in franchise history. The next year, however, would be the year the Raptors weren't as strong as before, but they were this time tied with the Cavs in the East with a record of 51-31 and the 2nd and 3rd seed. They need to play for the opportunity to face the Celtics in the conference finals for the 2nd time in a row. The Cavs and LeBron specifically were the only things in the way from Canada going after a championship. And with that, the Raptors trading for Serge Ibaka during the summer, he was able to help the Raptors bolster their paint defense and potentially be a wall for LeBron, who can deal with him vertically as a very capable shot blocker in his prime. But in even more dominant fashion this time, the Cavs and LeBron were able to stomp the Raptors in 4 easy games where they won by an average of 15 points, while LeBron himself averaged 36 points a game on 57% shooting from the field, 48% from 3 on 6 attempts, and in some instances looked like he was straight toying with them, and the media absolutely noticed it.
If LeBron James would have spent that ball 2 times in front of me and shot that shot yesterday, and I love Bron. That would have been a flagrant 1.
Yeah. But this was the superior difference people refer to in the Eastern Conference during LeBron's second run in Cleveland. He already owned Kyrie Irving, who was a top 5 point guard candidate at the time, but now you match him up with LeBron James, who's enjoying the fact that there weren't too many superstars in the East to test him, while all the other ones were out West fighting each other for supremacy every year. The Raptors may have had Kyle and DeMar, but the Cavs had something much better. But they had one more chance as they knew LeBron's contract was coming up to an end, so this would be the perfect opportunity to beat them. And even better news was coming up. The Cavs were absolutely imploding. Kyrie Irving was traded to Boston, and the Cavs had a bunch of inexperience on their team after trading most of their roster at the trade deadline. And much better, the Cavs owned the 2nd worst defense in the NBA that year. This would be the perfect opportunity to take over the Eastern Conference, as the Raptors had the best record in the East, outdone their last franchise record by 1 game, and added more talent all around to bolster their depth, mainly in G Leaguer Fred VanVleet and rookies in OG Anunoby and Jakob Poeltl. But as LeBron James sealed his 2nd round matchup with a tight series against the Pacers, the Raptors were sure this time this would be their year. And as Game 1 is coming to an end with LeBron James having a pretty pedestrian game for his standards, with 24 points at the time and down 2, with 30 seconds left, hits a turnaround fadeaway shot on OG Anunoby to tie the game. And as the game goes into overtime, the Cavs survive the Raptors in Game 1. Game 2 was a bit more of a slip for the Raptors, allowing the Cavaliers to score 128 points and let LeBron and K-Love put together 74 points in a blowout win. But no worries, the Raptors have been in this situation before in the first series between the two teams. All it takes is some adjustments and luck, and you're back in the series. And that's what ended up happening in Game 3, getting a tie off of OG Anunoby's 3 with 8 seconds left. The only problem is, like the meme in the NFL and giving quarterbacks way too much time at the end of the game for a game-winning drive, the Raptors gave the Cavs the opportunity to end the game in any way possible as they were tied. All the Raptors needed was a missed shot, and they could potentially end the game in OT to put the series 2-1. But with the timeout being called by Tyronn Lue, he wrote up a play, and that play was simply get LeBron the ball and let him cook. And that's exactly what would end up happening in a totally unexpected manner.
Throws up the floater. Good night, Cleveland.
Now, I want you all to know, I watched this shot live on TV and was in complete awe at just how he could attempt what was basically a shot you do when you're playing horse. But he did this in an NBA playoff game as the final shot. Just LeBron being LeBron. But with LeBron hitting that shot and absolutely deflating the Raptors, watching as they knew they had a superior team on paper, but are now down 3-0 due to the actions of one man. And if you think me calling them deflated was an overstatement, in Game 4, in a sweep situation, the Cavs at home went ahead and beat the Raptors by 35, ending the game basically at halftime, being up by 16, and with a 37-point third quarter from the Cavaliers and LeBron and Kyle Love scoring 27 of those points in the third, the Cavs' ticket to the Eastern Conference Finals was punched for the 4th year in a row. Now, we can talk about the what-ifs in this time versus the Raptors with LeBron potentially missing certain shots and other factors, but what this rivalry came down to was the fact that no one in this 3-year span could ever contain LeBron. We can talk about the mental iron grip LeBron had over the Raptors, and especially their leader in Demar Derozan, who had many moments to the media that screamed that he wasn't mentally prepared for their series. Demar Derozan said he'd give up $100 to anyone who could stop LeBron. If we had LeBron on our team, we would have won. There is even an article about how Demar felt relieved after hearing the news LeBron left for LA, because he knew the chances of winning a ring were just that much more plausible. But as we all know, he'd end up joining him in the West soon after. And then as the cherry on top, the whole LeBronto meme that was shown off for months to come. There are many on top of many ways the Raptors were being clowned for the way they lost LeBron, and in some cases LeBron only, in a 3-year span. But that just shows the absolute difference between the teams in the playoffs who were good in the regular season, who then face off against a true superstar, especially in a debatably depleted Eastern Conference. So where do we place this on the tier list? Well, it's gotta be on the bottom. Outside of the 2 games where he lost due to his teammates' errors, LeBron has a record against the Raptors in the playoffs of 12-2, and on average beat the Raps by 19 each game they played. This is not a rivalry for LeBron to struggle against, but more of a rivalry for the case of the Raptors, who are looking to overcome a literal GOAT candidate, and in 3 tries, they failed terribly. D tier. You might disagree with them being at the bottom, but if you were watching games like I was, you knew how heavily in the Cavs' favor everyone was that wasn't from Canada. And to my Canadian viewers, don't throw hate my way, because you knew this was coming. There has been many great sports rivalries in the span of the NBA timeline. Magic and Bird in the 80s, the Bulls and the Knicks in the 90s, Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, the list goes on. But in the 2010s, as LeBron was the face of the NBA, making finals appearance in his sleep, there was truly no one stopping its dominance, whether in a Heat jersey or now in a Cavaliers jersey back in Cleveland. But one franchise came up from the ground who was able to challenge LeBron James head-to-head for 4 years and stop him from winning 3 championships, and that was the Golden State Warriors. Before the Dubs were known as they are now as multiple-time champions and even winning one last season, they were a team being built from the scratch and from the ground up, with then all-star Steph Curry, a 3-and-D genius in Klay Thompson, and one of the best defenders in our modern age, Draymond Green. The season before, they got knocked out in the first round by the Clippers in 7 games, but that next year with new coach Steve Kerr, they turned a 51-31 record to a 67-15 record and having the best offensive and defensive rating in the league. So what people didn't know was the Cavs and the Warriors met up in the finals in 2015, was almost half of the decade, and was going to be a competition between 2 men in LeBron James and Stephen Curry. But as we all know, the first meeting of the Warriors and Cavaliers battle was only a preview of what people truly wanted, as the Cavaliers were missing Kevin Love due to him having a Mortal Kombat fatality done on him by Kelly Olynyk of the Celtics. So with already one link of this giant team in the Cavaliers being gone, the battle of juggernauts would still go on without a hitch. Game 1 started off with a nice preview of what this series was going to be, with LeBron James showing the Warriors that he was not going to be stopped, scoring 44 points. However, the team effort that the Warriors were known for ended up winning them the game, with Klay Thompson and Steph scoring 47 points and Iggy scoring 15 off the bench. But in that game also, we saw something that would define the series this year, with a knee injury to Kyrie Irving. So now LeBron was without both of his all-star teammates that became the reason he went to Cleveland in the first place. But LeBron has been in tougher situations. He showed that he still had what it took to win games in this series, winning 2 straight games, leading the series 2-1. Game 2 was an amazing battle of back and forth basketball that ended with a Stephen Curry layup to tie the game with 8 seconds left, where then LeBron James missed a game-winning opportunity from the mid-range, and Tristan Thompson missed the tip in for the lead. But in overtime, they were able to squeak by through their defense and making their free throws. But overall, a 39-point triple-double for LeBron James certainly helps from LeBron too. Game 3 was much of the same, with another 40-point game from LeBron and him finishing the game scoring the Cavs' final 6 points. But as I talked about plenty of times on this channel, after Game 3 is where Steve Kerr changed the NBA forever with the small ball depth lineup, placing in Andre Iguodala with Draymond Green in the starting lineup to make a more versatile lineup for defense and to hurt the Cavaliers on offense with their speed and 5-out capabilities. I go into it fully, but I talked about it so much on this channel, I'd just be wasting my breath. But in games 4 through 6, when the Warriors won 3 straight, it proved to be way more effective than anyone thought, limiting LeBron James to sub-40 shooting numbers from the field and shooting 27% from 3. This was truly the first time you've seen LeBron James play so badly, or at least not up to code, having to deal with everyone on the team who was not Stephen Curry, being able to guard him and not able to mismatch hunt. Add that to the fact that there was still hope in sight due to Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving being out. You get the Warriors winning 3 straight games, twice by double figures, and LeBron losing in the finals once again. But at the same time, it was also showing the world that LeBron James could possibly be human, and showing a strategy that is actually effective at limiting a peak, well, he's always been at peak, LeBron James. At the same time, with the context of Kyrie Irving and K-Love being out, but you know, I'm just repeating talking points from that time. But speaking of talking points, the next year, things only got that much more interesting. In round 2, both teams were playing for supremacy in their conferences, but the Warriors were far and beyond the best team, breaking the single season win record with a 73-9 record, and own one of the most dominant MVPs in history with Stephen Curry. But as they met up in the finals once again, it seemed quite impossible to most people how the Cavs could prevail and beat the Warriors. And with the Cavs owning their other 2 All-Stars in K-Love and Kyrie, people knew they was going to receive one of the best final series in NBA history, or at bare minimum, a display of pure dominance that even one of the best players of all time couldn't even overcome. And that's exactly what people everywhere were seeing, as the Warriors, who were 39-2 at home, would take a commanding 2-0 lead to start off the final series, winning both games by over 15 points, and Game 2 in particular by 33 points. And what was even crazier at the time was the fact in those 2 games, LeBron seemed human once again, going for 23 points and 19 points in those 2 games. And of course, not with the best shooting splits either, having to deal with the same small ball lineup that gave him trouble the year before. Game 3 showed promise for the Cavs, getting 120 points and beating the Warriors by 30 due to all of the all-around scoring efforts of the Cavaliers players, and with bad shooting nights from the Warriors. But can you really rely on that happening on 4 games? And then with Game 4, you had LeBron again looking human for his standards with 25 points and losing by 11. So now we're down 3-1, losing one of your games at home and giving the Warriors home court advantage truly for the rest of the series. But as I told plenty of times on this channel already, this is when, like in the 2011-12 campaign, is when LeBron had to truly take the reins in himself to see a real difference with their team's success, instead of totally relying on the team together to get it done, which created the first and only 3-1 series comeback in the finals, and quite the team to do it against, and a team that people truly considered to be on the scale of beating the peak Michael Jordan Bulls in their second three-peat. And this came off him averaging 36 points, 11 rebounds, and 9.7 assists And also 3 blocks and 3 steals a game while shooting over 50% from the field and 40% from 3. And of course, this wasn't without its moments that came to legit define the series in general and have a lot of people looking back at it in pivotal moments that could have changed if it went another way. We all know those moments after Draymond Green suspension in Game 5 due to his text that he gathered, Stephen Curry fouling out in Game 6, Andrew Bogut's injury that kept him out in the final games, and being a last means of defense for LeBron, even though he didn't have that much of a fucking impact in the series. I read your comments. I read every single one of them. And of course, that doesn't mean the Cavaliers didn't finish the job themselves despite of all of that. And you already know what I'm referring to in Game 7 of the finals.
Irving and Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good! Kyrie Irving from downtown!
So now with that series over and done with, LeBron then owned one of the most impressive finals wins in history, overcoming one of the best teams of all time, with himself on the front of that, tying this rivalry 1-1. But as we all know, that became the peak of the series, as later that summer, Kevin Durant would sign with the Warriors, sending the NBA in a frenzy. But for the king of the East, he was unfazed, since the Cavaliers have already toppled the Warriors once and could potentially do it again, even though he didn't. But in the 9 games they played in the next 2 finals, LeBron would time and time again meet his match, and seeing his limits of how he could even beat a team like this, losing in the next 2 finals and not in close fashion at all outside of 2 games. In Game 1 of the 2018 finals that went into overtime due to, well, J.R. Smith, and Game 3 of the 2017 finals where they lost by 5 due to a pull-up 3 from KD over LeBron with 45 seconds left that would end up defining the series of how overpowered the Warriors were at the time. And the main difference of the 2 teams were the picture of KD pulling up over LeBron showed exactly how much is needed to even make a LeBron-led team look weak in comparison. But there was not a lot of hope in that time span for anyone to beat them in a 7-game series outside of one scare. I'm looking at you, James Harden. But the rivalry of LeBron James and Stephen Curry and the Warriors will be immortalized by the NBA history books forever, and for good reason, which is why on the tier list, the rivalry of these 2 teams will end up with the Boston Celtics on the S tier. Rarely do we ever see such an athlete look overpowered in a sport that he represents the face of, but the Warriors gave us multiple instances of how LeBron could be limited and beaten. Add on to the fact that how the NBA changed in general, the amazing moments it brought up alongside that, and his individual performance to make these wins happen in 2016, you have one of the greatest sports rivalries in history. When it comes to rivalries in sports, rarely do you see many great ones happen in history. Even in this video, you can call some of them debatable that I mentioned in this video due to what the nature of an actual competitive rivalry is. But in the 20 years LeBron has played in the NBA, he has made many enemies whose sole purpose became to overcome him and beat him, as the only way they knew they was going to win a championship was getting through the King of Akron. Whether it be the Celtics that took over the East for a time in his younger years, the Pacers who looked as good as them but had to go through him to make it to the finals, or even the Raptors who simply didn't have enough firepower to compete. Hopefully while watching this video, you enjoyed the many enemies and rivals LeBron has made over the years, and just how much he was blocking people off from success due to his play, going at one point 8 straight NBA finals and 9 NBA finals in 10 years. But as always, hope you enjoyed today's video and learned something new, as my vision for this channel is to inform and entertain. Check out my social medias for the inside life of Alvin and the other channel news. Check out my Twitch where I stream weekly, and my second channel I post my streams. And lastly, if you want to talk to your boy, there is always my Discord. But with all that out of the way, this is your boy, Alvin Linguini, saying peace.